Welcome, Mark DiCarpo here from lettersandbooks.com, Rusty Wheels Media. I'm here with Brian Teague, BL Teague from Letters That Are Meant to Be Read, Volume 3, one of the contributors. How's it going, Brian?
It's going well. I'm really excited. It was a thrill to actually see the book published.
Yeah, it sure is. And you're in it. 4 letters, right? 4 of these
4 letters.
Yours. Are they all, let me ask you right away, are they all secrets?
No. One of them is secret. One of them that I'll be sharing later is one that I wanted to send to my best friend when I was 16 and chickened out. The rest are a combination of a little bit of fiction, a little bit of catharsis. They were just powerful things for me to write in the situation that I was in.
How did you hear about Letters That Are Meant to Be Read and Rusty Wheels Media?
I heard about it through an announcement from Free Contests. You can see them on Twitter. They generally publish new announcements about contests and writing things and Twitter hashtags. And this was one of them. I followed the link and it sounded really interesting.
For those of you who are just joining us or haven't heard about us, so we have a letter writing contest. Actually, Brian was a part of the very first one, the brainchild of other author A.M. Hounshell. It's always his idea. I'll never stop saying that it was his idea to have a letter writing contest. And what was nice about it is that we put out the contest. I put it out at first on markdcarpo.com. Lettersandbooks.com wasn't a site yet, so it hadn't even been built, but I put it on my author website, and it just got shared around all over the place without me doing anything. So I didn't have to pay. I didn't pay for that to be shared around because it was a free entry contest. I know that some contests, I don't know if you've ever done these, Brian, but I know I've never done them. But some writing contests, they make you pay for your entries, and that never really crossed my mind. I was just looking for more letters and to spread the word. And I had no idea how fast it would take off. I think it was a 4-week contest, and we got over 200 letters in that period. And you know, the first 2 volumes that are over here, sitting over here, the first editions, they have new covers now, but they were where I just had to beg people to send in letters, and we got some new readers for the second volume, so we had a little bit more and that kind of thing. But this book that you contributed to. It's definitely something to be proud of. It's a lot of work on your part, on the part of my staff, and it's 350 pages of wonderful secrets that I just love. What about sitting down and writing these letters? Did the one you're going to read later, did Dear Mike you already had, and you kind of tailored for the contest? And how did you write the other ones?
The other ones were based off of different times in my life. The very first one that I wrote, which was the one that I was initially going to submit, was actually a letter to my mother. And I wound up having to spend 13 months on the East Coast helping her and helping my stepfather through a difficult medical situation. And I found that writing this letter really helped me through the separation from my own family, as well as working through some of the issues that I faced with my parents. And from there, it just kind of branched out into several different areas of my life, of things that I've always wanted to say, as well as some things that maybe I wish had gone differently.
Since submitting these letters, have you written any more?
I haven't yet. In between the time that I submitted these letters and now, I returned home. I'm happy to say that my mother is doing very well. And I've been focusing on a couple of other projects right now.
Yeah. Go ahead and read Dear Mike. I'd love to hear you do that.
Dear Mike, do you ever stop to think about how many lives you've touched? How many lives you saved? I never really understood what you saw in me. But then again, at that age, I really didn't understand what anyone saw in me either. And yet, there you were, a junior talking to a freshman, and a really young freshman at that. You were my best friend in high school. You took me under your wing and made me feel special. I think you might have been the first person that I met who didn't want anything from me except my friendship. For 2 years, we were practically inseparable. You really made high school livable for me, and I dreaded the thought of you graduating. And I was too afraid to tell you my dark secret. The truth is, I'm gay, and I had the biggest crush on you. It was like little electric shocks ran through me each time you touched me or hugged me. God, how I loved to wrestle with you. I remember one time we were in your room and you were changing clothes. You took off your underwear and I struggled to look anywhere but at you. I knew that if I looked at you, you'd be able to tell that I was in love with you, and I couldn't take your rejection or your revulsion. When you left for college, I wrote a letter to you. Like this one, actually. I was too scared to send it, too afraid that I would risk our friendship. I was sure our friendship would continue strong and unabated. Alas, that was not to be. My final 2 years in high school were challenging in their own ways, and we drifted apart. I cling tenaciously to the memories of us. They are all I have left. That, and my first young love that will never completely fade. I looked you up on Facebook thinking somewhere deep down you might have been, I don't know, hitting on me that time you changed in front of me. Apparently not. You have a pretty wife and 3 of the most beautiful children I've ever seen. All of them have your amazing eyes. I thought about sending you a message just to say hi. I almost reached out. And yet, I found I wanted to keep the man I knew and still love rather than discover who he is today. I know you will never see this, so it's silly for me to even ask. Can you love a gay man? Because I miss you, brother, but I won't go back in the closet for anyone. Wishing for my best friend back, Joe.
I remember reading that for the first time. I'm like, wow. So this kind of has a little bit of everything here. This has some secrets. This has the unrequited love aspect to it. Lost friendship, obviously. And did you write it in one sitting, or what?
I wrote that in one sitting. When I sat down to start it, it just poured out.
Those are some of the best ones where you just sit down and it just comes out. How long did it take you to write it?
More than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Of course, it took me about 3 weeks of editing.
I'll take 10 minutes of writing and 3 weeks editing any day. If you can pour out a beautiful letter like that, sure. Was it there in the back of your mind before you sat down? I mean, obviously this is a part of your life, so it was kind of gnawing at you for a while.
No, it really wasn't. It was the thought of reaching out to someone who really impacted my life to let them know that. And then as I was starting to write, it was, well, I can't explain how much you affected my life without you knowing about what I kept hidden from you.
Yeah, who you are. Yeah.
And I'm happy with who I am today. I love who I am today. And I really wanted him to know that, and to know that without him, I wouldn't be where I am today.
What about your other letters? So you've got Dear Mom,
Mm-hmm.
Dear Dad, and then Dear Parents. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Dear Mom is the first letter that I wrote, and that was dealing with the medical situation. Mm-hmm. And I've never had the best relationship with my parents. When I came out, it was kind of an ugly scene.
How long ago was that?
That was 27 years ago, or 28 years ago, something like that. And for a while, we didn't speak. And then we've gradually gotten to know each other again. And having that 13 months with them really changed what I thought and how I interacted with them, and really how they interacted with me. They were much more interested in the family that I've established here. Mm-hmm. And more open to me talking about things that weren't weather or work related, because for a long time, that's all we talked about. My Dear Parents is actually kind of an apology letter. I wanted to come out to my parents in a far better way than I did.
Yeah.
And we had a tremendous argument when I came out. And at the time that I wrote it, I felt like I robbed both of us of something that could have been very special, because I gave in a moment of heated anger. To my dad, that one's hard, because it dealt with a very abusive situation, and the one question that I've always had, which was why? Why did you do this? And my brother, my older brother, was never struck by anyone. And I remember vividly, and this was the kind of the crux of that writing, when my father grabbed my stepmother's arm as she was about to hit my brother, and he told her, "You will never do that to him again." And that left me wondering, why him and not me?
Mm-hmm.
And that was truly a catharsis in writing. By the time I was done with it, I was crying.
Someone's going to read that either now or into the future and do the same thing, or feel the same way. So you can share that. What's the beauty about it is that you can share that moment, those times, that experience with other people that have felt them too, or thought they were alone. It can be a very cathartic thing. And what a lot of people don't realize when they write the letters is that someone's actually going to read them. Someone may buy this book and like only half of them, and that's fine. They might flip around too. I mean, we spend a lot of effort. You and I grew up at a time with albums, and the order of a music album was like important. It kind of set the tone. And obviously, if you like Pink Floyd or something, it's really important then. For some bands more than others, and so setting the tone with the letters and the order is always like a hardship for me. Like, it takes me a little while, and I have to really, I have to have help, and I have to, have some reassurance that I'm doing this correctly. And I try to do heartbreak, and throw in a funny one and kind of mix it up a little bit. But the reality of it is some people will just flip through this thing for the next year, 2 years, and maybe they discover your letter 18 months from now, and they're like, wow, I felt that way too. Or they really understand me, or I really understand them. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And it continues on like that, because you write a letter, it feels good. You get some things off your chest, but someone's going to read it, and you never know if they might be going through the same thing right then and there. And it can be pretty good. Do you think you always write about hardship, tragedy, unrequited love, or do you think you got a funny letter or two in you? I know you've read some of these that are pretty funny, right?
Oh, there's some that I just was laughing all the way through them. I think so. The situation that I was in when I wrote those letters was, as I mentioned, both difficult and challenging at the same time. In addition to other things, I suffer from cluster headaches, and so I'm a walking barometer. Living in Jacksonville, Florida, was hard from that aspect too, especially dealing with hurricanes. Some of my writing, especially when I think about the letters, is really reflective of whatever I'm going through at the time. So my goal is to write some happier letters next.
Do you think like being able to get that stuff off your chest through writing helps?
It does.
Yeah.
It does, absolutely. I wrote those letters about halfway through my time in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was at a very low point, because I had realized that my husband and I, he's in the Navy, and he had been deployed to Hawaii for 3 years. Well, his return home cut right across the time that I was in Florida.
Yeah.
And it hit me right before I started those letters that it wasn't going to be 3 years that we were separated, but 4 years before I could come home.
Yeah. Didn't write about that yet.
No, that
Separation away.
that separation in itself is something that I signed up for.
Sure.
Being married
to
to
the military spouse, you kind of knew the deal, but 4 years is a long time. Sure.
It is. But through that time, we were able to utilize our vacation days to visit each other. So we usually saw each other about 20 days out of the year, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but
It helps,
we made every minute count.
Yeah. What are you working on? What's next for BLT? What's next for Brian? What are you doing?
I'm currently working on a short story for another anthology. Mm-hmm. The particular theme that I'm writing on is temporal deactivation. Then I was working on a novella that I wanted to submit for a contest that unfortunately I'm not going to make the deadline for. Mm-hmm. So I'll save it for next year. And I'm also working currently on 2 novels. One is To Save the World. It's about a post-apocalyptic dystopian future and facing the end of the world, the end of humanity. And that one I'm releasing serially on Wattpad. And that's what I've got working right now. I have one completed manuscript that I'm currently editing. And that the plan for that one is I'm hoping to turn that into a 3-book series.
What do you think your next release is going to be?
I'm hoping it's going to be in the temporal deactivation and anthology.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite writers is one of the anchor writers for it.
Oh, okay.
And if I could be published in the same book that she is, I would be out of this world ecstatic.
What about your novels? When do you think you're going to be done?
To Save the World, I'm hoping to wrap that one up sometime in the next 3 months. And I'm hoping to have the novella finished shortly after that.
What's your experience with Wattpad? What's that like?
It's interesting. They do some fun things to keep authors interested and keeping them returning to posting. For instance, in each of the genres, your story will get rated, and it's rated by the number of viewers, the number of completions, the number of stars that they've given. And it was a shock when To Save the World actually hit #1 on the End of the World list.
Oh, really?
And as I watched the numbers drop back down now, it's telling me, okay, it's time to release another chapter. I use actually a competitor of Scrivener called Storyist.
Storyist?
I settled on that one partly because of price. It's cheaper to implement across all of my devices than Scrivener was.
Yeah.
And so I have all of my writing available to me to edit or to continue writing on my phone, on my tablet, as well as on my computer. Most often, I'm using my tablet to write. That gives me quick and easy access to if I need to look something up, because I'm trying to figure out, well, what herb is actually the appropriate one for medicine.
Yeah.
For a particular medical treatment. That's where I found that I do my best work is utilizing my tablet, because it's where I have the least distraction. The other place that I do a lot of writing is actually on my phone.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming onto the show and being the first. Well, A.M. Hounshell's kind of the first, but he's a part of RWN. So being the first interviewee for Letters Never Meant to Be Read, Volume 3. I also want to thank everybody for contributing to this beautiful book. You have some really great letters, Brian. Definitely some heartfelt messages in here, and some things that other people can definitely relate to. And you're doing great. Brian, as far as your writing is concerned. I'll just keep it up, and I look forward to more letters in the future from B.L. Teague for Letters Volume 4. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm thrilled to be published in this book.